Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Haley Rowe. I'm a sales and marketing coach and strategist for health coaches, life coaches, and wellness professionals who want to become a leader in their field by building their online community, rocking their sales process, and finally feeling confident about how they promote themselves and their marketing. On this show, we talk about tips to grow your business, save yourself time, and finally be able to create a sustainable, profitable business. Let's get into it. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Zero to Hero Coach Program. This is my 4-month program teaching coaches and online service providers how to grow your online business, book clients consistently, overcome your sales fears, and finally rock your social media visibility. If you struggle to create a sustainable coaching business, this program is for you. Check out haleyrowe.com and book your free strategy call with my team or myself today. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Health Coach Nation podcast and the Facebook live streams we do with special guests. I want to introduce today's guests, but before I do, I want to let you guys know that this show is sponsored by the Zero to Hero Coach Program, which is my program to help online wellness and life coaches find their ideal clients, book their ideal clients, and show up confidently online in their business without sales fears, without mindset blocks. And today we have one of my guest speakers from the Zero to Hero Coach Program, and she was so darn good that I said, you know what? Let's do a podcast interview. And she's the queen of podcasts and PR. And so, Christina, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. But before I do that, I'm sorry, I keep delaying it. I also want to let you guys know today we're going to be talking about 3 things that health coaches and life coaches should be doing to up their publicity game. All right, go for it, Christina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Lankowski, and I am the founder of Publicity by Christina. And essentially, my goal is to help online entrepreneurs go from best kept secret to go-to expert in their niche using the power of free publicity. Publicity is kind of something that people have a hard time wrapping their head around or grasping. They've heard it's important, but they're not quite sure what it means. So that's stuff that we're going to talk about today and, dive into how to use publicity to your advantage.
Yes. And I think that there's this common misconception among coaches and online professionals that they have to be like Oprah or a celebrity, or they have to be, 20 years into their career to start doing PR, because there's this factor of imposter syndrome, or am I good enough? So what would you say to people getting stuck in that phase?
I think that is what you brought up is very common. Imposter syndrome gets in the way of a lot of people pitching themselves for publicity. They think, who am I to say that I'm an expert in XYZ? I'm not Oprah, like you said, or I haven't been doing this for 20 years. But the fact of the matter is that, first of all, every single person that's listening to this has credibility markers that you absolutely can use when you're pitching yourself, to get press. And it might not be, I've been doing this for 20 years, but it might be my degree is in XYZ, or I've taken this particular certification. I actually, in my course, we talk about the 17 different credibility markers that there are that you can, kind of use to put yourself out there. And I can guarantee that every single person that's listening to this has at least one, probably multiple of them. And the other thing that I like to keep in mind, I heard this quote once, and I just thought it was amazing. And it was like, to be an expert, you only have to be considered an expert. You only have to have 10% more knowledge than the general public or your general customer has. 10% more knowledgeable on whatever it is that you teach. And for most people here, they have way more than that. But just remember as a baseline that you know so much than you give yourself credit for. And I am here to show you, and Haley's here to show you what an awesome person you are and how to get yourself out there and be more confident when you do it.
I love that. So it went a little cut out for a second there, but you were saying there's 17 credibility markers potentially, right, that coaches could have, and that we all have them no matter where you're starting from. So could you give an example of maybe what that might be?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of a few that I briefly touched on were like, if you have a degree that's related to what it is that you do now, whether you just got it, maybe you're a 2020 graduate, or, you've had this degree for 10 years, whatever, that's an absolute credibility marker. Maybe you've done a specific certification or gone through a special program. I know that you have life coaches on here. If they went through like Brooke Castillo's course or something like that, that's absolute, or the life coach school, excuse me, that's absolutely something that, shows that, hey, I actually know what I'm talking about. I'm someone that has this experience. Even being a part of masterminds, things like that, being a part of online summits. So if you've ever presented at maybe an online summit of some sort, that's absolutely a credibility marker. And if you've had any past media coverage, of course, that's one as well, or been on any podcasts or anything like that. So I promise you, you've got stuff going on. We just have to figure out, okay, what are those couple things that I can really show my expertise with?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that what you said about, I want to kind of go up on a tangent, that life coach school program, it's like $18,000 or something crazy. It's a pricey program. So if you guys are being babies after you, I'm just going to say it straight, do an $18,000 life coaching certification program, I would hope you're going to want to make your investment back. You're going to want to put yourself out there. And by the way, the most important part, it's like kind of when they say the most important part of an exercise is when you're starting to get tired. That's when you're going to grow. When you finish your $18,000 life coaching certification, this is the time to invest in your business, put a lot into your business, put yourself out there and get clients. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I think that those are all some really good examples. You have to start somewhere, and you all have something about yourself that you can milk and just share with the world. So
and one thing I
really
wanted to
go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to piggyback off that. Your credibility markers can change.
Go for it.
Your credibility markers will change over time. The more media coverage you get, the more people that you work with, that type of stuff, that's going to evolve, over the course of your career. So, you may start in this one thing and you might feel like, wow, I only have a couple things going for me. And that's great, by the way, that's fine, but that's not set in stone. It's only going to continue to grow the more work that you do.
Absolutely. So tell us about what are these three things that health coaches should be doing to get PR and podcasts.
Okay, perfect. So I have three things that I think that, what, sorry? Oh, are we good? Okay. We have,
we had a little delay, but we're good.
Okay. I have three things that I think that health and life coaches should be doing to get more visibility, to get more publicity. But kind of the first thing, if it's all good, I'd love to take just a few minutes and talk about what exactly publicity is, just to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page. Okay, I got the thumbs up, so we're good to do that. Awesome. I just think this is important because when I hop on calls with people, maybe with a potential client or something, and I'm like, what do you think publicity is? And I don't say this to be holier than thou or anything like that. I say it because the answers are incredibly varied. Some people will be like, press releases? Unsure. Some people are like, a thing they do on Mad Men. People just aren't exactly sure what it is. And so I always like to break that down a little bit if I can at the beginning, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So essentially, when it comes to marketing your business, upping your visibility, your work most likely falls into three distinct categories, and that's earned, owned, and paid opportunities. So owned are the channels that you own. So your newsletter, your website, your social media platforms, that's all stuff that you have control over. You determine what goes on there, what you write, all that good stuff. Paid is, shock shocker, things that you pay for. So typically that's ads, stuff like that. And then earned is what I focus on. So that's when a third party source, writes about you, or you're a guest on their podcast or something like that. So it's some sort of media attention that you're getting that you didn't give any compensation for. Because even like an influencer campaign, if any money was exchanged, that becomes a paid, that becomes a part of the paid category. All right. So publicity, the work that I do is all about getting coverage from a third party without paying for that. Okay. So that's essentially what publicity is. And all three of these categories are really important. And they each play a part in being successful with your visibility. Kind of like you said, you just did this life coach school, you just got all the training. Okay, now how do I get it out there? And publicity should be a part of that. It's not necessarily more important than the other two, than the owned and the paid. It just should be on the table. And for a lot of people, it isn't. And the reason for that, I think a lot of the time, is that it doesn't have a distinct ROI like you might be able to see with ads, or you might be able to see with some certain campaigns that you run. If I run an ad campaign and I spend, $20 a day on Facebook and I see 5 new leads a day, well, then I can say, all right, I spent $200 and I got, okay, I'm not good at math, but I got that many leads, to come in to my funnel. And that's awesome. With PR, you don't necessarily have that same distinct ROI. A lot of times it's more of like a tipping point. And the example that I kind of always like to give is Amy Porterfield, who's one of my mentors, someone that I follow. She is like the queen of list building, right? So she runs ads. That's what she does. And she was the focus of a Forbes article last summer. And from that one Forbes article, she saw a 20% increase in her list, 20% from someone who already crushes list building. Like that's what she focuses on. And she saw a 32% increase in her podcast downloads just from that one piece of media coverage. And the thing that I just always like to say about that is the reason for that is that people trust something from a third party more than they trust something from an ad. People understand that an ad is something that's paid for. And when you get a piece of media that is not paid for, that is something that media outlet has decided to write about, or the podcast host has decided to bring you on. They really listen, they take into account more what that is, as opposed to maybe just coming off of a cold ad. They're not a cold lead at that point. They're a warm lead at that point when they come onto your list, because you've really upped that know, like, and trust factor. And so that's the really important thing about publicity. That's kind of.
I want to.
What? Sorry.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to chime in for a second with the. First of all, that's so impressive, and that's such an interesting statistic you shared, or that her list grew 20% just from a Forbes article. Because
yes,
my other question is, some of those are paid for. And so, but the general public doesn't know that, versus
yes,
they all know ads are paid for. So I think
yes,
you just pointed out, and it's don't argue with what is, meaning, like, even though, like, I was like, oh, an article wouldn't do that much for me. But then I was in a two articles actually recently, Disrupt Magazine and another one about holistic wellness and stuff. And I'm shocked by the perception that happens after you post an article or something. It's like all my normal posts.
That. Yes.
And I post this article. It's like, oh my God, you've made it. Congratulations. Right.
Yeah.
So I can attest to that. And I think you just shared a great example with Amy Porterfield. But anyways, go back to what you were saying.
No, I think what you just said is so true. And I love hearing that. I love hearing, like, okay, I pitched myself to these public, or whatever happened. You pitched yourself in some way, or they came to you, whatever. You saw publicity coverage in these two publications. People take that seriously. They really do respect the heck out of that. And, the fact of the matter is when I give that Amy stat, I always like to preface it with, you can get those same numbers without it being a Forbes level publication. If I have 100 people on my list and I saw a 20% uptick because I was on someone's podcast or I did an interview, that's 20 people on my list of 100. Like that's a big deal. And those are people that are coming in warm, people that are coming in that already maybe like and trust me. And that credibility has kind of been established. One thing I wanted to point out about this, you mentioned how sometimes those things are paid, which are typically called an advertorial. So if you were to see a piece, in a publication and that was paid, they do have to legally say that it was paid for. So it may not be obvious, like they do a good job of hiding it as much as they can, but they do legally have to say that. So, that's kind of something that's up there, or they'll either have it at the top or at the bottom or whatever, wherever they decide to put it in there. That is something that, some places choose to do. I work with tourism organizations a lot, and that's how a lot of them work. They do quite a few advertorials, in like Sunset Magazine or these other places because people want to read about the publication. So that is certainly an option, but for what I'm focusing on, what I'm talking about today is all going to be free paid opportunities.
Awesome. And can you just tell us real quick, we want to go back to the free opportunities, but I want to know what truly is a press release and what do you include in that? Like, how does that work?
Sure. I'm glad you asked that question. And that's kind of why I spoke about what publicity is in general. Because a lot of people tend to think it's just press releases. And press releases 100% used to be something that was very, very valuable. Before we had the internet, before we had all these things, that was how media knew what was happening. You sent a press release and the information got to them. There are absolutely still times when press releases are appropriate, mainly for events. If you're doing an event, something like that, I highly recommend sending out press releases. If you have a new hire, like if you work at a company, something like that. But when it comes to, and to back up, what should be included in those is kind of those who, what, where, when, why. And that's the way that I structure any kind of press release or a media alert is kind of the two ways that I do it. And I'll literally have a paragraph at the top, and then I will literally say who, what, when, where, why. And I will give a sentence on each thing. And then I'll have another little paragraph that typically has a quote that they can just pull directly from that. So like a quote on the event or a quote on whatever they're raising money for that they can just use, like the media can just use. Because the fact of the matter is, reporters are busy. They are busy, busy people. They are trying to get content out all the time. So they just want to be able to get stuff really quickly. And the easier you make it for them, the more likely they're going to use what it is that you're sending them. With that being said, the things we're going to talk about today are more focused on pitching, like pitching yourself. And that's what I would recommend doing for people that are looking to get more media coverage, like in their health coaching business or, their life coaching business. Instead of necessarily sending a press release, unless you have an event or something like that going on. If you have that going on, then that totally makes sense. But otherwise, sending an individual pitch is going to take you a lot farther.
Excellent. Okay. So back to free opportunities and pitching yourself for those. How do you optimize those opportunities? Meaning what kind of lead magnets are you going to, or what are you going to promote as a call to action? And then Definitely. Just whatever else you want to share. I'll just be quiet. You do such a good job when I just let you talk.
You're good. I'm just like, I'm going to give you every tangent that I can possibly give you on XYZ.
I love it.
Truly, the reason that I want to is I think there is so much opportunity for health coaches and for life coaches. And that's why I wrote out these three. I really sat down and thought about what. Oh, sorry. We good?
You're here. Okay, you're good. Okay. I'm just going to be quiet and not move.
No, so okay. All right. Sorry. I was like, I just truly believe there's so much opportunity for health coaches and life coaches and that type of thing. And that's why I really sat down and thought about the 3 things that I wanted you guys to take away with today. And I think that's a good thing for Haley to ask, which is, how do we make the conversion, right? From getting the media coverage to actually having that mean profit in our business or upping our visibility and that type of thing. Because all this work is great and it ups our visibility, it ups our credibility. But at the end of the day, we all want to get paid, right? For the work that we do. And so having a good call to action, having a strategic call to action, is very important. And so you just got to think about what that ideal customer of yours wants. What is it that's going to make them go, okay, I just heard this lady on a podcast. I really loved what she had to say. I'm going to go over to her website and grab whatever that, download is, or, maybe it's my Instagram page. You just decide what that call to action is that you want to send people to. But that's part of the beauty of doing publicity work, is you actually get to share that call to action. And in traditional media like TV, and stuff like that, you don't typically get to do that. So I'll get into that a little bit. But that's why I'm really focusing on kind of I'm not going to be like, hey, go pitch yourself to be on the Today Show, because that's not necessarily even going to be the best use of your time for you to get actual customers to your list. So with that being said.
Awesome. Okay.
We ready?
Love it.
I'm ready to dive in.
I'm ready.
Dive into my 3. Okay. So number 1 is media queries. And when people are newer to the publicity arena, they are always shocked to learn that members of the media are actually looking for sources on the regular. So sources for their pieces that they're doing. And these are free opportunities that you can take advantage of. And I looked up some this morning because I wanted to get some recent examples to share with you guys of the type of things that are coming through every single day. And these opportunities all come from a few main sites, and that's HARO, which is helpareporter.com, SourceBottle, and Quoted. And I can make sure and send those to Haley so that she can put them in the show notes, if that's something that people are interested in signing up for. But within the last week, here are some things that have come through that I thought might be of interest to your audience. InStyle Magazine, looking for psychologists to talk about workout motivation. MyFitnessPal blog, looking for sleep doctors and sleep therapists to talk about signs that stress is affecting your sleep. Vital Proteins, looking for fitness professionals to develop a workout for their readers. The Daily Meditation, writing an article on teaching mindfulness to kids. They were looking for health or meditation experts. Live Kindly, looking for nutrition experts to talk about how to replace sugar with monk fruit sweetener and plant-based baked goods. The list goes on and on. There are so many opportunities that are coming through. And a lot of people just aren't aware that these things are here. And they wonder, how does so-and-so get that piece? How did so-and-so get that mention in, the MyFitnessPal blog? I mean, how amazing would that be if you could put on your website that you were featured in a MyFitnessPal blog or Vital Proteins' blog, that type of thing. That's just like you were saying, Haley, those credibility things that people are just like, oh my gosh, wow. Like, you really know what you're talking about, and that's definitely how people take it. So that's the thing that I always like to say is be aware of these media queries. My one word of caution on them is you will get a lot of emails. So HARO, which is the helpareporter.com, they send 3 emails a day. Yes, 3 emails a day. So what I recommend is setting aside 15 minutes each day to just look at the prior 24 hours that have come through. Okay, so setting aside 15 minutes, looking at the prior 24 hours, seeing if there's anything, and there won't be stuff for you to respond to every day. There might be some days where you see like 3 things that you're like, oh man, I could totally respond to this. And then you won't say anything for 2 weeks. Okay, so don't be disheartened. That's just the way that the media cycles. And then when you do see something that makes sense, like let's say you were like, I'm a nutritionist and I want to answer that monk fruit replacement for sugar, article that Live Kindly was doing, then take 15 minutes, 20 minutes and reply. Give them some thoughts, give them a little bit of information about you, a couple of those credibility markers that we talked about, and send back that reply. And the reason that I don't recommend spending more than 15 or 20 minutes, because people will be like, oh, I got to spend like an hour, writing this response out, is they're going to get a lot of responses. So don't spend a ton of time. Get your good info to them. Don't worry about it being perfectly grammatically correct, worried about XYZ. Some of the things that I've responded to are just quick little few sentence, like couple bullet points under a reply. And that's how I've seen coverage happen or had them reach back out to me for more information. So don't get worked up. They know that you're just responding to this query. They didn't reach out to you specifically asking for this information. So just kind of pique their interest, give them a couple of those credibility markers, and then let it go from there. So I think that media queries is just a great place for coaches to be looking. It's just a spot that a lot of people don't know about. And then when they know about it, they get overwhelmed by it because there's so much. So that's why I'm saying kind of know what's happening and just set some time aside. Cool. All right.
Cool.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Okay.
Number 2, if I do say so myself, I like that one. All right. Number 2 was, and we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but become a go-to expert for your local media outlets. So I know I talked about maybe not sending a press release in regards to that, but even if you work with clients mostly online or outside of, where you generally live, you'll still benefit from being on local news segments or writing a piece to go in your local paper. And the reason that I kind of say that, or why, is that in addition to amazing practice and great local publicity, the content can be used across all of your channels. So if you do a feature on a local news segment, that's your e-newsletter for the week. That's up on your social media. You're putting that everywhere that you possibly can. And that is really credibility boosting content for people. It doesn't matter that it's a local publication or something like that. It is impressive to people. Okay. And they like to see that type of stuff. They like to see, oh, wow, they're on that show. They're showing them how to do these exercise moves, or they're showing this recipe or whatever, showing how to do a meditation. That's the stuff that people really, really, really like to see. And a good way to get started with that is just going on your local station. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but what I recommend to do that is call the newsroom, ask who's in charge of segments, and get their email address, and then shoot them an email with some ideas. Okay. So don't worry about sending a press release. Don't hit them with a phone call right off the bat. Hit them an email first with a few of your ideas. And then if you don't hear back from them within a couple of days, then maybe you can pick up the phone and see if you can give them a call and get a hold of them in that way. But if you want to offer to do a monthly exercise column for your local newspaper, do it. I mean, maybe you could even do a corresponding training video, that they put up online with it as well. There's a lot of cool opportunities there, and your local media is looking for content all the time. So if you can give them good content and become kind of one of their go-to people, one of their go-to experts, it's going to serve you really well moving forward.
Awesome. I love those 3 sites you mentioned. I had no idea. Those are amazing opportunities. And let's hear the number 3.
Number 3, no surprise here, guesting on podcasts. I know it's kind of meta for me to be on a podcast talking about how you should guest on podcasts, but I promise you that this is just one of the best ways for you to get out in front of your ideal customers. And I think of all 3 items, this is really where the most opportunity lies for coaches, like health coaches, life coaches, that type of thing, because there are over 1 million podcast shows listed right now. 1 million, just like, boom. And it's growing all the time. And there are podcasts for virtually every single niche that you could possibly imagine. And there are places for you, and there are places for you to get in front of your ideal customer. And, if you're anything like me and my husband, and, we listen to podcasts every week. We have our favorites. We have ones that we listen to together, ones that we listen to separately. We really take stock in what those hosts are telling us. So when you're a guest on a podcast, you trust that host to be bringing people in that know what they're talking about, and they're going to direct you kind of the right way. So that's kind of a big thing for me. And if you've never guested on a podcast before, starting out small is good. If you find, you reach out to a podcast and they're like, oh, we have 50 downloads or we have 100 downloads an episode or something like that. That's great. People get really caught up in like, well, do I really want to spend an hour of my time for, to get in front of like 50 people? And I'm like, if an event called me and was like, hey, we have 50 of your ideal customers that are going to sit in a room and you can talk to them, I would be booking that flight, booking that hotel room. I would be there in a heartbeat. And you don't even have to do that with this. You're able to just get on, hop on, essentially have a recorded conversation, drop some knowledge on, your ideal customers, give them a call to action, and, let the relationship kind of build from there. So I think that podcast guesting is amazing. This is something that I focus on a lot. This is what I do for my clients. I just want to make sure that if you start pitching yourself to podcasts, which I think you should, be strategic about it. So starting small is great, and make sure that you're getting in front of your ideal customer. That's kind of the big thing that I just always preach is like, yeah, I mean, I could be on podcasts that talk about different things. Like, I'm mom to a special needs child. I could be on a podcast that talks about that, but that doesn't serve my business. So I want to be strategic about it, right? Like I want to say, okay, well, I want to see if I can get on Haley's podcast because she's talking to my ideal customers, right? That's what I want to do. So just make sure that you're being strategic about it, not just necessarily going on a podcast because you can. Go on a podcast that makes sense to get in front of your ideal customers. And then make sure you're set up with that call to action. So just be prepared before you go into it with, okay, I'm going to direct people towards my freebie, or I'm going to direct them towards my Instagram account, or maybe you have a free Facebook group, whatever it is that you want to direct them towards. Just make sure going in that you're really clear on, okay, this is where I want to send people at the end of this. But I think the opportunity is huge. It's amazing. And I think that more and more coaches need to jump on the podcast guesting bandwagon.
Yes, well said, and really thorough in your explanation, which I always love. So one of the things, though, that I want to point out before we go today is that two things. Number one is there's no real way to know the number of downloads of a podcast, and that's something that you mentioned in our group call. And so therefore you're going to kind of just have to take a guess by looking at their social media accounts and, the kind of guests they're having on and things like that. And there's also, how do you recommend somebody go about finding and knowing what podcast their ideal client listens to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And your point on the downloads is very true. You can always ask a host, but just keep in mind that you don't know whether that answer is truthful or not. I mean, I think most of the time it would be, but just saying there's no way that you kind of have to like back that up. I'm sorry, what was the question? Wow, this is a day.
That's okay. The question was, it's all good. How do we know what podcasts our ideal client listens to?
Perfect. Sorry. Thank you. Just got back from a weekend camping, you guys. I don't know where I'm at. So there's a few ways to go about doing this. The first thing, and I know I taught this in Haley's group, is like, just ask your audience. So if you have some ideal customers, that you really trust and, you're like, oh, these are the perfect people, ask them, hey, what podcast do you listen to regularly? What is it that's in your earphones? You can put something up on social, put up a poll, or put up a, DM me or something like that, just letting me know, hey, what are your favorite podcasts that you listen to? And if you find that people are listening to kind of some of the same ones, like, well, there you go. That's an awesome one for you to be pitching to, and that that your ideal customer is already there. The other way that I recommend, I mean, there's services that you can purchase that will help you, categorize that stuff. But the other thing that I recommend is just going into iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and searching by category. So you can search by category, like I can go into health and wellness, and then I can actually go deeper into a subcategory like alternative health, or they had various different ones there that, vegan. I can put in whatever I want, or even put a term into the search bar, and I can see what's going to come up. There, it goes a little more in depth than that. That's something that I teach in my course, but just kind of baseline, you can head into iTunes and just take a look around as well, and just kind of see what looks like it could be a good fit for you and your audience.
Love it. And then with the podcast pitch itself, one of the most valuable things that I think we can share with our audience is to pitch topics that are interesting and would be what that person's audience wants to hear. So I have a podcast pitch template in the Zero to Hero Coach program. You have a podcast pitch template. I don't know if it's on your website or if it's in your course, but Christina has great tips for when it comes to pitching. Yeah. So Christina, any other tips you want to say real quick about pitching yourself?
Yeah. I mean, just remember the thing that I was going to say is keep it simple. Once you realize that pitching is pretty formulaic, it becomes a lot easier. You kind of realize like, okay, I think at the beginning people just get overwhelmed with it. And I completely understand. I'm that way with like everything else, so I understand getting overwhelmed and, feeling like, well, that's just not something that I could possibly add to what I already do. But once you get comfortable pitching, it's going to happen so much smoother. It's going to be so much easier because you'll realize the formula behind it. And this is something that I see people talking about more and more, like in a mastermind that I'm in, our person who runs that mastermind, she's like, you need to be getting on 3 podcasts a month. Okay. So she's like, this needs to be a part of your actual marketing strategy. This is something that you need to be doing. So it's only going to continue to grow and grow. And I actually do have on my website, though, for your listeners, a podcast pitch checklist. So how to write the things that you need to kind of write that first pitch. Templates and all that good stuff will be included in my course, which I'm really excited about. It's coming out. It's coming up in October, but it's actually going to be a live masterclass series. So it'll be live times where I'm going to teach, but then we're going to have live Q&A, live implementation time. Be able to ask me questions in real time to get that feedback, because I know it's kind of hard to sometimes do things in a vacuum and not have the feedback coming back on a pitch or something like that. So I'm really excited about that. I have the podcast pitch checklist, which, hopefully I can drop a link in the show notes with Haley for you guys to grab that. That would be awesome. But, again, just get out there, start doing it. You are an expert. You are awesome. People want to hear from you. And there are so many podcasts out there that you are absolutely destined to find some that are going to be a good fit for you.
Love it. Thank you so much, Christina, for being on the show today. And I highly recommend that everybody gets that checklist on her website. We'll put that in the show notes at haleyrowe.com. And Christina, where can everybody connect with you?
Yeah, I am getting real into my Instagram, just really loving my stories up a bunch. So you can definitely find me at publicityxchristina. So publicity by Christina. And that's where you can find me. And I'm going to be giving tips every single week on PR. I'm going to be shouting out to podcasts. I'm going to do like a podcast each week. Of course, this one will be on there, but a podcast each week that I, kind of focus on and say, hey, here's a great one. This would be a great one to pitch for XYZ. Okay. So kind of be giving that out there across all different kind of niches, for people. I said it in the beginning, but I'm all about helping online entrepreneurs go from best kept secret to a go-to expert in their niche. And publicity is one of the best ways to do that. Uh-oh, looks like we might be stuck.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, well, we lost you, but we got that. We'll put that in the show notes. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, everybody. Happy pitching.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And if you liked it and want to reserve your very own free sales audit, go to haleyrowe.com/strategy-call to book your very own free sales audit. On the call, we'll talk more about the common concerns you get from your ideal clients, how to overcome those concerns, how to coach through objections, how to change your mindset around sales, and improve your sales process so you can be closing and converting more clients. I can't wait to connect with you, and go to haleyrowe.com/strategy-call to take the first step. Thanks so much. Have a good day.